who will use the power to put Atlantis back
This is the exact spot that Vulcan...
He spent his entire life
together again.
not even close. Your Atlantean instincts. All the teaching of the surface world.
Need to be the best.
Amy.
I am.
Destruction. The top of this trident resides the power from hands it would bring. It would unite above and below.
Not like this one, you don't.
But in the hands of the true heir.
Time has come for Atlantis to rise again.
You got one of those.
Must stop him.
And how do you propose we do that?
By retrieving this.
Already.
Surface whether you like it or not.
Your mother always knew you were special. You'd be the one to unite. You believed. Our two worlds.
Now, Atlantis has always had a king. I need something more.
Greater than a king. But what could be?
A hero.
Aquaman, 2018, takes you deep into a hidden underwater world where a man caught between land and sea must discover who he really is. Arthur Curry, born half human and half Atlantean, is forced to step up when an epic war threatens both oceans and the surface world. Packed with stunning visuals, powerful action, and surprising myths, this movie is more than just a superhero story, it's a battle for a kingdom. In this video on Movies Explained MS, we'll break down the full story, hidden facts, and secrets you might have missed. Aquaman is a 2018 American superhero movie based on the DC Comics character with the same name. The film was co-produced and released by Warner Bros. Pictures and is the sixth movie in the DC Extended Universe. It was directed by James Wan, with the story written by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick and Will Beall. Jason Momoa plays the role of Arthur Curry, also known as Aquaman, a man who must accept his destiny as the ruler of the underwater kingdom of Atlantis. The story follows Arthur as he tries to stop his dangerous half-brother, King Om, played by Patrick Wilson, who plans to unite the 7 underwater kingdoms and launch a war against the surface world. The movie also stars Amber Heard, Willem Dafoe, Dolph Lundgren, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and Nicole Kidman in important supporting roles. Work on Aquaman first began in 2004, but the project did not move forward until the release of Man of Steel in 2013. In August 2014, writers Will Beall and Kurt Johnstad were hired to create separate versions of the script. James Wan officially joined the project as director in April 2015, and by July 2016, the studio decided to move ahead using Beall's screenplay. Most of the main cast was announced throughout 2016 and early 2017. Filming started in May 2017 in Australia at Village Roadshow Studios on the Gold Coast in Queensland. Additional scenes were filmed in Canada, Italy, and Morocco. The filming process ended in October 2017. Many visual effects studios worked on the movie, creating realistic underwater worlds, detailed character movements, lifelike hair effects, and fully computer-generated animals and locations. The movie had its world premiere in London on November 26, 2018. And was released in the United States on December 21, 2018. Although critics had mixed opinions about the film, it became a huge success at the box office, earning $1.152 billion worldwide. This made Aquaman the highest-earning movie in the DCE, the highest-grossing film based on a DC Comics character, and the fifth highest grossing film of 2018. At the time of its release, it also ranked as the 20th highest grossing film in cinema history. A sequel titled Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was released on December 22, 2023. In addition, an animated miniseries called Aquaman, King of Atlantis, which takes place after the events of the first film, was released in October 2021. In 1985, in Maine, lighthouse keeper Thomas Curry rescues Atlanta, the queen of the underwater kingdom of Atlantis, during a violent storm. The two fall in love and later have a son named Arthur, who is born with the special ability to communicate with sea creatures. When soldiers from Atlantis arrive, sent by King Orvaxa, the ruler of Atlantis, to bring Atlanta back because she escaped an arranged marriage, Atlanta is forced to leave her family to keep them safe. Before leaving, she promises Thomas and Arthur that she will return when it is safe. She goes back to Atlantis and asks her trusted advisor, New-Eyed Vilko, to secretly train Arthur. As Arthur grows older, he becomes a strong and skilled fighter. However, he turns his back on Atlantis after learning that King Orvax ordered Atlanta's execution for loving a human and having a child considered illegitimate. In the present day, Arthur is known to the world as a powerful metahuman called Aquaman. 1 year after the defeat of Steppenwolf, Arthur stops a group of pirates who are attacking a Russian Aquila-class submarine called K-461 Volk. During the fight, the pirate leader Jesse Kane becomes trapped by a torpedo and dies. Arthur refuses to save him as punishment for killing innocent people. Jesse's son, David Kane, watches his father die and swears revenge against Aquaman. At the same time, Marius, the son of King Orvax and Arthur's younger half-brother, has become the new king of Atlantis after his father's death. Convinces King Nereus of the underwater kingdom of Xebel to join him in a plan to unite Atlantis and destroy the surface world, which believes has polluted the oceans. Promises that if he unites all four underwater kingdoms, he will become Ocean Master, the supreme commander of the seas. When and Nereus are attacked by a submarine, claims it proves the surface world's hostility and feels justified in launching a massive tsunami. It is later revealed that secretly hired Jesse and David Kane to hijack the submarine in order to manipulate Nereus and turn him against the surface world, while also planning to kill Arthur. To help with this mission, gives David a powerful Atlantean battlesuit. King Nereus's daughter, Mera, who is engaged to marry refuses to support his violent plans. Instead, she seeks out Arthur for help. Arthur agrees to go with her to Atlantis after tsunami nearly kills his father, Thomas. In Atlantis, Vulko urges Arthur to search for the legendary Trident of Atlan, a powerful weapon once used by Atlantis' first king, which would allow Arthur to claim his rightful place as ruler. Before Arthur can act, soldiers attack, and Arthur is captured. Blames Arthur for their mother's death and challenges him to a duel, nearly killing him before Mera rescues Arthur and helps him escape. Together, Arthur and Mera travel to the lost kingdom of the deserters hidden beneath the Sahara Desert, where the Trident was created. There, they discover a holographic message that leads them to Sicily, where they uncover the Trident's true location. Meanwhile, imprisons Vulko and forces the kingdom of the fishermen to swear loyalty to him by killing their king. David Kane, now calling himself Black Manta, attacks Arthur in his new suit but is defeated. Arthur and Mera then steal a boat and head into the open ocean, where they are attacked by terrifying amphibious creatures known as the Trench. A mysterious underwater passage transports them to an unknown sea at the center of the earth. There, Arthur reunites with Atlanta, who survived her execution and escaped into this hidden sea but was unable to find her way home. Arthur confronts the Carathn, a legendary sea monster that guards the Trident of Atlan. After proving his strength and worth, the Carathn allows Arthur to claim the Trident, granting him control over the seven seas. As launches his army against the kingdom of the Brine to officially declare himself Ocean Master, Arthur returns leading a massive army of sea creatures, including the Carathn and the Trench. Seeing Arthur wield the Trident of Atlan, Om's forces recognize him as the true king of Atlantis. Arthur defeats Om in a final duel but chooses to spare his life. Om accepts imprisonment after learning that Arthur saved their mother. Atlanta is finally reunited with Thomas, and Arthur takes his rightful place as king of Atlantis. In a mid-credits scene, Black Manta is rescued by Dr. Stephen Shin, a marine scientist and conspiracy theorist obsessed with proving Atlantis exists. Manta agrees to help Shin find Atlantis in exchange for assistance in getting revenge on Arthur. The casting of Jason Momoa as Arthur Curry, also known as Aquaman, marked a pivotal and unconventional choice for the DC Extended Universe. Director Zack Snyder, who initially envisioned Momoa for the role, approached him under the guise of auditioning for Batman in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Momoa, known for his rugged persona from roles like Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones, believed he was being considered for a villainous character opposite Batman. Instead, Snyder revealed that the audition was a test for Aquaman, a decision that redefined the traditionally blonde, clean-cut comic book hero into a more diverse, Polynesian-inspired figure. Momoa kept the casting secret for years, even as rumors swirled, adding to the intrigue surrounding the character's debut in Justice League before his solo film. This choice was lauded for bringing cultural representation to the forefront, with Momoa's Hawaiian heritage influencing Arthur's backstory as a half-Atlantean raised in a lighthouse. Snyder's wife, producer Deborah Snyder, later explained that Momoa's audition tape, where he delivered lines with his signature intensity, convinced them he embodied the outsider king perfectly. Momoa's physicality was a key factor at 6'4", and with a muscular build, he fit the demands of underwater action sequences, which required extensive training in harnesses and wire work to simulate aquatic movements. Trivia from the production notes highlights that Momoa incorporated personal touches, like traditional Hawaiian tattoos visible on his arms, blending his real-life identity with the character's mythology. This casting not only elevated Momoa's career but also set a tone for Aquaman as a film that subverted expectations, moving away from the comic's classic depiction to a more gritty, relatable hero. Amber Heard's selection as Mera, the fierce Atlantean warrior and Aquaman's love interest, involved a rigorous audition process that she emphatically claimed was earned on her own merit. Heard, previously known for roles in films like The Rum Diary and Magic Mike XXL, auditioned directly for the part, impressing director James Wan with her ability to portray a strong, independent queen who could hold her own in both combat and diplomacy. Despite rumors and later controversies suggesting her ex-husband Johnny Depp influenced the casting as stemming from Depp's alleged conversations with Warner Brothers executive Asa Heard testified in legal proceedings that she got herself the role by auditioning. Production stories reveal that Wan's vision for Mera was to make her a co-lead rather than a sidekick, drawing from the New 52 comics where she's a princess from Xebel. Heard's red hair and athletic build were enhanced with costumes featuring iridescent scales, and she underwent months of training in martial arts and breath-holding exercises for underwater scenes. Trivia notes that Heard was one of the first cast members announced after Momoa, with her role expanding from a cameo in Justice League to a central figure in Aquaman. Behind-the-scenes anecdotes include Heard's enthusiasm for the character's empowerment, as she discussed in interviews how Mera represented a woman who happens to be a superhero, not defined solely by her powers. This casting choice emphasized gender balance in the film, with Mera's arc involving political intrigue and battles that showcased Heard's dramatic range. Patrick Wilson's casting as Marius, better known as Ocean Master, Aquaman's half-brother and primary antagonist, stemmed from his prior collaborations with director James Wan on horror films like The Conjuring and Insidious. Wan, who took over directing duties from Snyder, sought an actor who could convey regal authority mixed with villainous zeal, and Wilson's ability to play nuanced, intense characters made him the ideal choice. Announced in December 2016, Wilson's role as the purest Atlantean king who despises the surface world was a departure from his usual everyman personas, requiring him to don elaborate armor and perform in motion capture setups for underwater fights. Stories from the set describe Wilson as the opposite of Momoa's laid-back Aquaman, with his blonde hair and stern demeanor mirroring the comic book's classic Aquaman look in an ironic twist. Wilson trained extensively in sword fighting and horseback riding, adapted for seahorse mounts in the film to embody Om's militaristic style. Trivia reveals that one cast Wilson partly because of their trust built on previous projects, allowing for creative freedom in portraying Om's motivations as environmentally driven rather than purely evil. In interviews, Wilson joked about the physical demands, noting how the harnesses made him feel like a puppet, but praised one's direction for blending spectacle with character depth. This decision added layers to the sibling rivalry, making Ocean Master a sympathetic villain whose casting elevated the film's dramatic stakes. Willem Dafoe's involvement as New Ida's Vulko, Aquaman's mentor and Atlantean vizier, was inspired by his admiration for James Wan's directorial vision. Dafoe, an acclaimed actor with roles in Platoon and Spider-Man, was drawn to the project after Wan pitched the film's epic scope and innovative underwater world building. Cast in 2016, Dafoe's Vulko serves as a wise advisor who trains young Arthur in Atlantean ways, a role that required him to ride mechanical sharks and perform in blue-screen environments. Behind-the-scenes stories highlight Dafoe's professionalism. Co-star Dolph Lundgren recalled how Dafoe forgot half his dialogue during grueling harness shoots but powered through with improvisation. Trivia notes that Dafoe's casting flipped his typical villain typecasting, making him Dafoe and to Aquaman as a heroic ally. Dafoe discussed in press junkets how the film's practical effects and Wan's horror background influenced his performance, emphasizing Vulko's loyalty and strategic mind. His experience with green screen from Marvel films helped, but Aquaman's dry for wet technique here filming on land to simulate water presented unique challenges, like mimicking zero-gravity movements. Nicole Kidman's portrayal of Queen Atlanna, Aquaman's mother and a pivotal figure in the origin story, brought Oscar-winning gravitas to the ensemble. Confirmed in 2017, Kidman was attracted to the role after Wan described Atlanna as a fierce warrior queen exiled to the surface world, allowing her to blend action with emotional depth. Known for dramatic turns in Moulin Rouge and The Hours, Kidman's casting was seen as unusual for a superhero film, but her scenes, including a high-octane opening fight, showcased her versatility. Production trivia reveals that Kidman's Atlanna appears in flashbacks and visions, with her costume featuring intricate pearl armor. Kidman shared in interviews that she joined for Wan's reputation and the chance to play a mother figure with superhero flair, noting how the role subverted expectations of aging actresses in blockbusters. Behind the scenes, Kidman's enthusiasm infected the set. She performed many stunts herself, including wire work for underwater escapes. This choice enriched the film's family themes, with Atlanna's sacrifice driving Arthur's journey. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's casting as David Kane, who becomes the vengeful Black Manta, introduced a rising star to the DCE. Fresh from Netflix's The Get Down, Abdul-Mateen II was selected in January 2017 for his ability to convey menace and charisma, qualities once sought for the tech-savvy pirate-turned-supervillain. Stories from auditions highlight his chemistry read with Momoa, where he nailed Black Manta's rage over his father's death. Abdul-Mateen II described the role as clown work in later reflections, emphasizing the fun of suiting up in the iconic helmet with laser eyes. Trivia notes that his casting diversified the villain lineup, drawing from comics where Black Manta is Aquaman's arch-nemesis. Training involved scuba diving and fight choreography, with Abdul-Mateen II bulking up to match Momoa's presence. His performance set up potential sequels, showcasing a breakout talent. Dolph Lundgren's audition as King Nereus, Mera's father and ruler of Xebel, leveraged his action hero legacy from Rocky IV and The Expendables. Cast in April 2017, Wan chose Lundgren for his regal bearing, perfect for a king allying with Om against the surface. Lundgren's towering physique and deep voice added authority, with trivia highlighting his red hair dye for authenticity. Behind the scenes, Lundgren praised Wan's innovative filming but later expressed disappointment over reshoots that altered his role in the sequel. His casting bridged 80s action stars with modern blockbusters. Temuera Morrison was cast as Tom Curry, Arthur's human father, bringing Maori heritage that paralleled Momoa's Polynesian roots. Known for Star Wars as Jango Fett, Morrison's role emphasized paternal guidance, with scenes filmed in Australia to mimic Maine's coast. Casting trivia notes the cultural synergy, as both actors share Pacific Islander backgrounds, enhancing authenticity. Randall Park joined as Dr. Stephen Shin, a marine biologist obsessed with Atlantis, drawing from his comedic background in Fresh Off the Boat. Park's casting added levity, with his mid-credits scene teasing future plots. Lou Dillon portrayed Merc, Om's loyal commander, selected for his martial arts expertise from Power Rangers. Lynn's audition involved demonstrating Atlantean combat styles. Michael Beach played Jesse Kane, Black Manta's father, in a brief but impactful role that sets up the villain's origin. Beach's dramatic intensity was key. Other notable castings include Jimon Hounsou as the Fisherman King, whose voice work and presence added to the underwater kingdom's diversity. Natalia Safran and Sophia Forrest played the Fisherman Queen and Princess, respectively, in roles emphasizing Atlantis' royal intrigue. Graham McTavish voiced King Atlan, the ancient ruler, lending gravitas through narration and flashbacks. His casting drew from his fantasy roles in The Hobbit. Julie Andrews surprised fans by voicing the Carathon, the mythical sea creature, a fun contrast to her Mary Poppins Returns release the same year. Otis Stange played young Arthur, capturing Momoa's essence in childhood scenes, while Khan Gulger and Kakoa Kekimano portrayed young Om and teen Arthur, respectively. The ensemble extended to stunt performers and extras, with many undergoing water tank training for authenticity. Casting director Lucinda Sisson focused on global talent to reflect Atlantis' diverse kingdoms. Expanding on Momoa's casting, his audition for Batman involved reading lines with a My Man flair, which Snyder loved for its uniqueness. Momoa thought he was up for Lobo, a DC anti-hero, but Snyder's pivot to Aquaman was a masterstroke. For Heard, her role's chemistry with Momoa was tested in reads, despite later claims of lacking spark in sequels. She fought to keep action-oriented scenes. Wilson's Om was inspired by environmental themes, with Wan directing him to play it as a zealot rather than cartoonish villain. Defoe's Volko involved yoga-inspired movements for fluidity, drawing from his theater background. Kidman's Atlana featured a transformative look with white hair, symbolizing her royal status. Abdul Mateen II's Black Manta suit weighed 80 pounds, requiring physical prep. Lundgren's Nereus drew from his real-life kingship in action films. Morrison's Tom Curry included Maori elements, like haka influences in father-son moments. Park's Shin was a nod to comic lore, with his obsession mirroring real oceanographers. Lynn's Merc involved custom armor fittings. Beach's Jesse Kane death scene was pivotal, filmed with practical submarine effects. Hounsou's Fisherman King used motion capture for his aquatic form. The Safrans as Queen and Princess added family dynamics to the kingdoms. McTavish's Atlan voice was recorded in Scotland, adding mythic tone. Andrew's Carathon was a secret casting, revealed post-release. Production development and pre-production. The journey of bringing Aquaman to the big screen began far earlier than most audiences realize. The earliest attempts to develop an Aquaman film date back to 2004, when FilmJerk.com reported that Sunrise Entertainment Salon and Peter Reish had plans to bring the underwater hero to theaters for Warner Brothers, with Robert Ben-Garant attached to write the screenplay. However, this initial attempt failed to materialize and the project fell through without gaining significant traction. In 2007, Warner Brothers shifted its focus toward a different approach that would have introduced Aquaman to audiences as part of an ensemble. The studio announced the development of a Justice League film with Michelle and Kieran Mulroney writing the screenplay. This project, reportedly titled Justice League: Mortal, would have served as Aquaman's cinematic debut. George Miller signed on to direct later that year, and Santiago Cabrera had been cast to portray Aquaman. However, the film faced significant obstacles following production delays stemming from the 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild of America strike. By 2008, Justice League Mortal was officially cancelled, leaving Aquaman's cinematic future once again uncertain. The character remained in development limbo for several years. In July 2009, reports emerged that an Aquaman film was in development at Leonardo DiCaprio's Appian Way Productions, and Warner Chairman and CEO Barry Meyer confirmed that an Aquaman film was indeed being developed. Despite these announcements, the project continued to languish without substantial progress for several more years. The turning point came with the release of Man of Steel in 2013, which successfully launched what would become the DC Extended Universe. The positive reception and box office performance of Man of Steel gave Warner Bros. Renewed confidence in developing a shared universe of DC characters. This momentum finally provided the necessary impetus for Aquaman's development to gain serious traction. On August 12, 2014, Warner Bros. Made a significant strategic decision by hiring screenwriters Will Be All and Kurt Johnstad to write separate scripts for the Aquaman film. This approach, known as dual tracking, had become increasingly common at major studios. The concept involves commissioning multiple scripts for the same project simultaneously, with the intention of pulling the best elements from each to craft the final screenplay. Be All, known for his work on Gangster Squad, would work on one version while Johnstad, who had written 300, Rise of an Empire, would develop another. The studio planned to select the superior version or combine the strongest elements from both scripts to move forward. Peter Jackson was approached twice to direct the film during this development phase, but he declined both opportunities. The search for a director continued until April 2015. When The Hollywood Reporter reported that James Wan had emerged as the frontrunner to helm the project. Wan, who had made his name in horror with films like Saw, The Conjuring, and Insidious, had recently demonstrated his ability to handle large-scale action filmmaking with the massively successful Furious 7. In June 2015, Wan was officially confirmed as director. Interestingly, he had been given the choice between directing The Flash or Aquaman, ultimately choosing the latter because he felt that The Flash's story had already been explored sufficiently on screen and television. In November 2015, the project underwent another significant development when David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick was hired to write the script. Johnson McGoldrick had previously collaborated with Wan on The Conjuring 2, establishing a working relationship that would prove beneficial. Initially, it was unclear whether Johnson McGoldrick would be writing a separate script or working collaboratively with the existing material. However, by July 2016, it was revealed that previous script plans had been scrapped entirely. Wan and DC Films executive Jeff Johns decided to move forward with a new script written by Will Be All, whose earlier work would form the foundation of the final screenplay. The final screenplay credit would ultimately go to David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick and Will Be All for the screenplay, with the story credited to Jeff Johns, James Wan, and Will Be All. The casting process began to take shape in October 2014, when Warner Bros. Announced Aquaman as part of the DC Extended Universe slate, with Jason Momoa confirmed to star in the title role. Momoa first appeared as Aquaman in a cameo role in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice in 2016, followed by a more substantial appearance in Justice League in 2017, before finally receiving his solo film. Momoa had signed a 4-picture deal with the studio and DC, initially expressing hope that Zack Snyder might direct the standalone film. In January 2016, The Hollywood Reporter announced that Amber Heard had entered negotiations to play Mera, the Atlantean princess and Aquaman's primary love interest. Her casting was officially confirmed 2 months later. In April 2016, Willem Dafoe was cast in an undisclosed role, which was later revealed to be New Ideas Volko, Arthur Curry's mentor and advisor from Atlantis. Throughout 2016 and early 2017, the supporting cast continued to fill out. On December 12, 2016, Patrick Wilson was confirmed to play also known as Ocean Master, Aquaman's half-brother and the film's primary antagonist. On January 31, 2017, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II was added to the cast as Black Manta, Aquaman's archenemy from the comics. Michael K. Williams had also been considered for this role. That same day, press reports indicated that Nicole Kidman had entered talks to play Queen Atlanna, Arthur's mother and former Queen of Atlantis. 2 months later, Kidman confirmed her participation in the film. By February 2017, New Zealand actor Temuera Morrison had entered talks to play Thomas Curry, Aquaman's human father. Jason Momoa specifically requested Morrison for the role, as Morrison was one of Momoa's acting idols. On April 12, 2017, Dolph Lundgren was cast as King Nereus of the aquatic kingdom of Xebel. Lou Dillon was cast in the film on May 15, 2017. Almost 2 weeks later, Michael Beach, who had voiced Devil Ray, a character loosely based on Black Manta, in the animated series Justice League Unlimited, was cast as Jesse Kane, Black Manta's father. In October 2017, Graham McTavish revealed that he had secured a role in the film. In April 2018, Randall Park was cast as Dr. Stephen Shin. In July 2018, Jimon Hounsou, Natalia Saffron, and Sophia Forrest were cast as the Fisherman King, Fisherman Queen, and Fisherman Princess respectively. The screenplay that Johnson McGoldrick and Beall ultimately crafted drew inspiration from various sources while maintaining its own distinct identity. Johnson McGoldrick later described the film as embracing a fun, globe-trotting quest movie structure, while also placing significant emphasis on family themes. He noted that Aquaman inherits his powers from his mother and his humanity from his father, making the concept of family central to the narrative. Director James Wan wanted to create a film that would take audiences on an amazing adventure while also providing meaningful character development and emotional resonance. Wan's vision incorporated elements from classic adventure films like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and Romancing the Stone, creating a cinematic experience that blended action, fantasy, and romance. Filming principal photography on Aquaman commenced in Australia on May 2, 2017, under the working title Ahab to maintain secrecy during production. The production was primarily based at Village Roadshow Studios on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia, with the facility serving as the production's home base throughout the shoot. Village Roadshow Studios, established in 1991, had previously hosted numerous large-scale film productions including Moulin Rouge, San Andreas, and films from the Pirates of the Caribbean series. The 22-hectare facility features 8 sound stages, with the largest standing 28 meters high, along with massive water tanks that proved ideal for filming action sequences. For Aquaman, the production took over the entire Village Roadshow Studios site. All 9 production offices, 9 sound stages including lockups, 6 construction areas, and wardrobe facilities were utilized for the film. Over 600 local crew members were employed, with approximately 80% of the crew coming from Queensland. The production engaged 1,417 suppliers and services across 426 different vendors, keeping the local area economically active for many months. The studio's backlit was transformed to create the Italian city scenes, with an exact replica of a town in Sicily constructed on the property. Between May and August 2017, extensive location shooting took place across various sites on Australia's Gold Coast. The production filmed at Main Beach, Coomera, Southport, and Amity Point on North Stradbroke Island in Queensland. Additional Australian filming took place at Hastings Point in New South Wales. The lighthouse that serves as Arthur Curry's childhood home was a particularly important set piece. A full-size house with the base of the lighthouse tower was constructed on location at the lookout of Hastings Point. Additional house and dock sets were built on sound stages, with digital extensions added in post-production to complete the lighthouse tower and extend the dock fully into the sea. Filming at the Hastings Point Lighthouse location began in August 2017 and concluded later that month. One of the most significant technical challenges of the production involved filming the extensive underwater sequences. Director James Wan acknowledged that creating believable underwater environments was extraordinarily complex and not an easy shoot. The production employed a technique known as dry for wet, meaning that actors were filmed on dry sets that would be made to appear underwater during post-production. For underwater action sequences, actors were suspended from hip harnesses on specially designed tuning forks. Principal photography officially wrapped on October 21, 2017. Bringing the 6-month shoot to a close. The production had successfully captured footage across 4 countries, Australia, Canada, Morocco, and the studio recreation of Italian locations, with the vast majority of principal photography accomplished in Australia. Post-production. Following the completion of principal photography, Aquaman entered an extensive and complex post-production phase that would prove crucial to realizing James Wan's ambitious underwater vision. The film required approximately 2,300 visual effects shots to complete the theatrical version, representing one of the most VFX-intensive productions in the DC Extended Universe. James Wan's longtime collaborator Kirk Morey served as the editor for Aquaman, marking their 5th collaboration together. Morey had previously edited the Conjuring films, Furious 7, and the Insidious films with Wan, establishing a strong creative partnership. 2-time Academy Award winner Charles Gibson, who won Oscars for Babe and Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and Kelvin Msil, known for his work on the Fast and the Furious franchise, served as the overall visual effects supervisors for the production. The visual effects work was distributed among multiple prestigious VFX houses, each contributing their expertise to different sequences and elements of the film. The primary vendors included Industrial Light Magic, ILM, Base FX, Rodeo FX, Scanline VFX, DNEG, Luma Pictures, Waiter Digital, Moving Picture Company, MPC, Method Studios, Digital Domain, and Clear Angle Studios. This global collaboration required careful coordination across multiple time zones, with facilities located in New Zealand, Montreal, Vancouver, and London all contributing to the final product. Industrial Light Magic served as the primary VFX company and delivered approximately 670 shots for the film. Jeff White and Philippe Rebers served as VFX supervisors for ILM. The company was responsible for creating the underwater kingdom of Atlantis and all its CGI animals, including the Carathon, the legendary sea creature that guards Auckland's trident, as well as the film's climactic final battle sequence. Creating Atlantis represented one of the largest environment builds in ILM's recent history, dwarfing even the creation of Wakanda in Black Panther. ILM's environment team created over 200 unique buildings, including the signature jellyfish-shaped structures that give Atlantis its distinctive appearance. They then laid out more than 7,000 buildings across districts covering almost 600 square miles, creating a vast cityscape for the action to travel through. For the entrance sequence to Atlantis, ILM built over 150,000 digital ships to fill the traffic lanes leading into the underwater kingdom. The underwater vessels were modeled after organic sea creatures and designed to move in naturalistic ways that suggested biological movement rather than mechanical propulsion. All the animals featured in the film, including whales, sharks, seahorses, and the massive Carathon, were built by ILM and animated using keyframe animation techniques. One of the most technically challenging aspects of the post-production process involved creating realistic underwater hair movement for the characters. Approximately 700 shots in the film required high-detail hair simulations. ILM had previously developed hair simulation software called Haircraft for their work on Warcraft, but the unique requirements of underwater hair movement in Aquaman necessitated significant upgrades to this technology. Normally, hair simulations use guide strands to define or influence the movement of groups of hair strands. However, this approach did not provide the desired look for underwater movement, so ILM ultimately simulated individual hair strands, which required enormous computational resources and processing power. Director James Wan had very specific ideas about how he wanted the underwater hair to behave. He wanted the hair to react to body movement, especially lifting up and away from the head, while remaining clear of actors' faces to avoid obscuring their performances. The hair needed to part naturally as characters' heads moved. Additionally, one wanted the ability to artistically direct the hair when purely physics-based simulations produced undesirable results. ILM developed new tools that provided much finer control over how hair clumps together, what strands stick together and what flows freely, and how to run high-fidelity simulations on individual strands rather than groups. The team also drew inspiration from comic book illustrations of Aquaman and Mera to inform the volume and style of the character's hair. To accurately simulate the way seawater absorbs light and color at various depths, ILM engineers developed a new software tool called Spectral Absorption specifically for Aquaman. ILM software developers worked closely with the company's color scientists to make this tool physically accurate while still giving artists the flexibility to adjust effects up or down as individual shots required. This tool proved essential in creating the distinctive underwater lighting and color gradients seen throughout the film. Scanline VFX delivered 450 shots under the supervision of Brian Hirota, Roland Langschwert, and Harry Mukhopadhyay. The main sequences produced by Scanline included the lighthouse and its surrounding environment, the Aquaman title card that follows the Boston Aquarium sequence, the scene where Aquaman pushes a hijacked submarine to the surface and rescues the sailors inside, Om's massive tidal wave that sweeps away Arthur and Tom Curry, including the rescue and aftermath, Black Manta being paid by Om for the submarine's delivery, and Arthur and Mera's visit to the terrifying kingdom of the Trench. For the tidal wave sequence, Scanline created large-scale water simulations that were integrated with a combination of day for night footage, blue screen shots for the actors in truck interiors, footage of a truck mounted on a rotisserie rig, an interior cabin filmed in a water tank, and extensive VFX simulations for debris and water interaction. The sequence required seamless integration of practical and digital elements to create the massive destructive wave. Method Studios, under VFX supervisors David Nelson and Craig Wentworth, handled several key sequences including the elaborate Sicily fight between Arthur, Mera, and Black Manta, Arthur's encounter with the Carathon in the Well of the Souls, and his acquisition of Itland's legendary trident. For the Sicily fight sequence, the team constructed physical sets including the main square of an Italian village and terracotta-tiled roof set pieces that were backed with blue screen. They also created a completely digital village based on detailed scans and documentation of the real air ice in Sicily. For the Well of the Souls sequence, Jason Momoa was filmed using the dry-for-wet technique, captured on set in rigs designed to simulate underwater movements. However, the VFX team ultimately felt these rig movements were too restrictive to achieve the desired fluidity and grace. As a result, artists replaced the majority of Momoa's performance with a digital body double, adding the CGI environment, the massive Carathon creature, and Arthur's free-flowing hair and costume. A specially designed 700 frames per second shot was created for the scene where the camera appears to travel through Arthur's eyes into his consciousness. Rodeo FX, supervised by Philippe Soairo, created the early aquarium sequence where young Arthur Curry demonstrates his ability to communicate with sea creatures. The team utilized a large volume of fish simulations and algorithms to populate the aquarium realistically. To capture authentic coral ecosystems, Rodeo FX artists created both hard and soft corals by developing a colonization growth system with procedural stem and tentacle generation tools. The artists also worked on the ruins of ancient Atlantis seen beneath the Sahara Desert, sculpting and texturing ruined buildings, bridges, towers, statues, and temples. They employed a modular, Lego-like approach to layering the environment with sand, dust, and rocks, creating the buried civilization. Waiter Digital, supervised by Dan Macarin, handled most of the digital de-aging work required for the film. They digitally de-aged Nicole Kidman and Temuera Morrison for the flashback sequences showing Arthur's parents when they first meet and during Arthur's childhood. Neg digitally de-aged Willem Dafoe for scenes where his character New Ides Volko trains the young Arthur Curry. Digital Domain, with Jay Barton serving as VFX supervisor, worked on creating the Dead King's Island environment and related sequences. Moving Picture Company, MPC, supervised by Darren Poe, contributed to various sequences throughout the film. Luma Pictures provided compositing and lighting work for several sequences. The post-production process also involved creating a director's cut of the film. Visual effects producer Kimberly Nelson Locascio revealed that the team created a version of every single shot in the movie for the director's cut, which served as a blueprint for the theatrical version. This director's cut utilized sophisticated post-visualization techniques that were advanced enough to allow James Wan to make informed decisions about what was working, what wasn't, and how to improve various sequences. However, James Wan later stated publicly that there would not be a separate director's cut release, as the theatrical version represented his complete vision for the film. An interesting production note involves the UK version of the film. Some additional details of blood and violence were removed from the UK theatrical release to achieve a lower age rating, making the film more accessible to younger audiences in that market. On November 3, 2018, James Wan announced via social media that post-production on Aquaman was complete, marking the end of over a year of intensive work to bring the underwater world to life. The finished film represented a massive collaborative effort involving thousands of artists, technicians, and craftspeople working across multiple continents. Music. On March 7, 2018, Rupert Gregson Williams was officially announced as the composer for Aquaman's musical score. Gregson Williams had previously composed the score for Wonder Woman, the fourth film in the DC Extended Universe, making him a logical choice for another DC property. His work on Wonder Woman had been well received for its emotional depth and memorable themes, qualities that would prove essential for Aquaman's sweeping adventure narrative. The soundtrack was released by Water Tower Music on December 14, 2018. 1 week before the film's theatrical release. The album featured Gregson Williams' orchestral score alongside 2 original songs created specifically for the film. The first original song, Everything I Need, was performed by American musician Skylar Grey. Written by Grey and Elliot Taylor, the song plays over the film's emotional conclusion and credits, providing a contemplative counterpoint to the epic action that precedes it. The lyrics reflect the film's themes of finding one's place in the world and the power of connection between people from different backgrounds. The second original song, Ocean to Ocean, was performed by American rapper Pitbull featuring vocals by Rhea. The track was written by Pitbull, George Becerra, Bianca Exel, and Gabriel Dunn. Notably, the song samples Toto's iconic 1982 hit Africa, with Jeff Porcaro and David Pitch receiving additional songwriting credits. This creative sampling choice created an unexpected musical bridge between classic rock and contemporary hip-hop, reflecting the film's own blending of classic superhero storytelling with modern cinematic techniques. Joseph Bishara, a frequent collaborator of James Wan who had composed music for many of Wan's horror films including the Conjuring series and Insidious films, contributed a special piece called Trench Engaged for the terrifying trench sequence. This composition created intense, horror-tinged atmosphere for one of the film's most frightening sequences, drawing on Bishara's expertise in creating unnerving soundscapes. Gregson Williams's orchestral score needed to accomplish several challenging tasks. The music had to convey the grandeur and majesty of the underwater kingdoms, particularly the stunning city of Atlantis. It needed to provide emotional support for the developing relationship between Arthur and Mera. The score had to enhance the intensity of multiple large-scale action sequences, including underwater battles featuring armies riding sharks and seahorses. Additionally, the music needed to capture Arthur's journey from reluctant outsider to confident leader willing to claim his birthright. The composer employed a full orchestra to create the sweeping, epic sound required for the film's vast scope. The score incorporates traditional orchestral elements with some electronic enhancements to create a sound that feels both timeless and contemporary. Specific themes were developed for different characters and locations, with Atlantis receiving particularly majestic musical treatment that evokes both its ancient history and advanced technology. Release: theatrical Aquaman's journey to theaters involved a carefully orchestrated global release strategy designed to maximize the film's box office potential. The world premiere took place at the Empire, Leicester Square, in London on November 26, 2018. This high-profile event featured the film's cast and crew walking the red carpet and introduced the film to international press and critics. Following the London premiere, Warner Bros. Implemented a staggered international release schedule. The film began its theatrical rollout in several international markets before opening in the United States, a strategy that allowed the studio to build positive word-of-mouth and momentum heading into the crucial American market. Many territories received the film in early to mid-December 2018, with the United States release scheduled for December 21, 2018. The film's original release date had undergone several changes during development and production. Aquaman was previously set for July 27, 2018. Which would have positioned it as a summer blockbuster. The release date was then moved to October 5, 2018, before Warner Bros. Ultimately settled on the December 21, 2018 date. This final date positioned Aquaman as a holiday release, competing with other major films including Bumblebee, Mary Poppins Returns, and Second Act during the lucrative Christmas movie-going season. The December release strategy proved prescient, as Christmas moviegoing can be particularly strong when families have time off from school and work. The film would have the opportunity to build its box office over an extended holiday period including Christmas Day and New Year's, potentially showing strong holding power if audience reception proved positive. In July 2018, approximately 5 months before the film's release, Warner Bros. Unveiled the first trailer at San Diego Comic-Con 2018, SDCC. The trailer was considered the best-received preview shown at the convention, generating enormous enthusiasm among the comic book and superhero film fan base. The trailer was subsequently attached to theatrical showings of major summer and fall releases including Mission Impossible: Fallout, The Meg, The Predator, Venom, and First Man, ensuring wide exposure to target audiences. The cast appeared on Sunday, July 22, as guests on Conan with host Conan O'Brien during SDCC, further promoting the film. By late August 2018, the studio held early test screenings with mixed reactions shared on social media. Some viewers described the film as good but not great, suggesting that while the film was entertaining, it might not reach the critical heights of Wonder Woman. On October 5, 2018, Warner Bros. Released a 5-minute extended video that provided a more detailed look at the film's story and spectacle. The first official television spot aired on October 16, followed by a second on November 1. Throughout November 2018, Warner Bros. Ramped up its marketing campaign significantly. Character posters were released for Aquaman, Mera, Black Manta, Ocean Master, King Nereus, Queen Atlanna, and New Ideas Vulko, giving each major character prominent visual representation. On November 7, the studio announced an extensive promotion schedule for November and December, featuring fan events, special screenings, and premieres in multiple international cities including Beijing, London, New York City, Manila, Los Angeles, Miami, and Gold Coast. Additionally, it was announced that the film would receive a special screening on December 7, 2018, during Brazil Comic-Con, CCXP, in São Paulo, one of the largest pop culture conventions in Latin America. The following week, an official behind-the-scenes featurette was released, showcasing footage not seen in mainstream trailers and providing insights into the filmmaking process. 2 days later, the film's main theatrical posters were released, depicting Aquaman and Mera in their full costumes against dramatic underwater backgrounds. On November 19, the final trailer was released alongside the announcement that tickets were on sale, allowing eager fans to secure their seats for opening weekend. The same day, approximately 30 minutes of footage was shown in China during the first stop of the film's international promotion tour. The Chinese preview screening generated exceptionally positive reactions, suggesting strong potential in what would become one of the film's most important international markets. Warner Bros.' marketing strategy attracted a broad demographic, particularly making efforts to appeal to female audiences through advertising, social media engagement, and promotional partnerships. The colorful, adventure-oriented tone of the marketing distinguished Aquaman from some of the darker, more serious DC films that had preceded it, suggesting a more accessible and fun movie-going experience. The film was released in multiple premium formats including REL 3D, Dolby Cinema, and IMAX 3D, maximizing revenue potential through premium ticket pricing while also providing audiences with enhanced visual experiences that took full advantage of the film's spectacular underwater sequences and visual effects work. Home media. Following its theatrical run, Aquaman transitioned to home entertainment formats. The film was released for digital download on March 5, 2019, allowing consumers to purchase or rent the film through various digital platforms. Physical media releases followed on March 19, 2019. Later sources indicate March 26, 2019 for the US market specifically, when the film became available on multiple formats including Blu-ray, 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, 3D Blu-ray, and standard DVD. This multi-format release strategy ensured that the film was accessible to consumers regardless of their home entertainment setup. The home media release proved commercially successful. The film achieved an estimated total of approximately $27.4 million in US DVD sales, demonstrating that despite the decline of physical media, DVD remained a viable format for many consumers. Blu-ray sales proved even stronger, with an estimated total of approximately $42.2 million in US Blu-ray sales. Combined, these domestic video sales brought in a total of approximately $69.7 million, representing a significant additional revenue stream beyond the theatrical box office. Director James Wan stated publicly that there would not be a director's cut or extended edition released on home media. Unlike some comic book films that save extended footage for home release, Wan confirmed that the theatrical version represented his complete creative vision for the film. All the work that had gone into creating a director's cut during post-production had been to help shape the theatrical release, not to create an alternative version for later release. The home media releases included various bonus features that provided audiences with behind-the-scenes insights into the film's creation. These typically included featurettes on the visual effects work, the creation of Atlantis, the film's action sequences, and interviews with cast and crew members. Though specific details of the supplemental materials varied by retailer and format. Box office. Aquaman achieved extraordinary commercial success, ultimately grossing $335.1 million in the United States and Canada, with an additional $816.9 million from international territories. for a total worldwide gross of $1.152 billion. These remarkable figures made Aquaman the highest-grossing installment in the DC Extended Universe, surpassing even Wonder Woman's impressive performance. The film also became the highest-grossing film based on any DC Comics character, surpassing Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises, which had previously held that distinction with $1.08 billion. Within Warner Bros.' overall catalog, Aquaman became the studio's third highest-grossing film worldwide, trailing only Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows A Part 2, $1.342 billion, and, eventually, Barbie, $1.446 billion. At the time of its release, Aquaman ranked as the 20th highest-grossing film of all time, and it finished as the 5th highest-grossing film released in 2018, demonstrating its competitive strength in a year filled with major blockbusters. The film's financial performance represented a crucial turning point for the DC Extended Universe, which had struggled to find consistent box office success following the underperformance of Justice League in 2017. The domestic opening weekend performance, while strong, was actually the lowest opening of any DC film to that point, which initially concerned some industry observers. The film debuted at $67.9 million for the traditional three-day weekend, $72.6 million including early preview showings. However, this modest opening compared to other superhero films proved misleading, as the film's December release date meant it opened on a Friday just before Christmas fell on Tuesday, historically an unusual time for movie-going patterns. What distinguished Aquaman's box office performance was its extraordinary holding power and long-term playability. The film made $10.9 million on Monday following its opening weekend, and then an impressive $22 million on Christmas Day itself, becoming one of only 6 films in history to gross over $20 million on Christmas Day. The film's 5-day total opening through Christmas reached $105.4 million, a much stronger figure that better indicated the film's commercial appeal. The film's second weekend saw it earn $52.1 million, representing a modest drop of only 23% from the opening weekend, an excellent hold by superhero film standards. The Christmas-New Year's corridor proved particularly lucrative, with the film making $10.1 million on New Year's Eve and $16.8 million on New Year's Day. Aquaman remained in first place at the domestic box office for 3 consecutive weekends, grossing $31 million in its third frame. The film's impressive legs ultimately resulted in a multiplier of approximately 3 times its opening weekend, demonstrating exceptional audience satisfaction and positive word of mouth. In its 4th weekend of release, Aquaman made $17.4 million but was finally dethroned from the number 1 position by The Upside, which exceeded expectations by opening at $20.4 million. However, this same weekend marked a historic milestone for Aquaman globally. The film crossed the $1 billion mark worldwide, having earned $758.3 million globally in its second weekend and $940 million in its third weekend before surpassing the coveted billion-dollar threshold. International markets proved absolutely crucial to Aquaman's success. China emerged as the film's single largest market with a staggering final gross of $298.3 million. Making it the second best performance for a US title in China at that time, barely edging out Venom's $272.2 million in the Middle Kingdom. This represented a remarkable achievement, as the Chinese box office had become increasingly important for Hollywood tentpoles, and Aquaman's success there exceeded all expectations. The film performed strongly across numerous international territories. Mexico contributed approximately $5 million during key weekends, while Indonesia generated $3.6 million, France added $3.2 million, and the United Kingdom contributed $3 million during comparable periods. The film's colorful, Action-oriented spectacle and emphasis on visual storytelling over dialogue-heavy exposition proved particularly effective in international markets where language barriers might otherwise pose challenges. According to Deadline's analysis of the film's profitability, Aquaman generated approximately $260.5 million in profit when accounting for production budget, marketing costs, talent participations, and ancillary revenues from VOD, DVD, and television. While this profit margin represented a solid success, the film's overall revenue stream extended well beyond theatrical release to include merchandising, licensing, and other ancillary rights. Industry analysts identified several factors contributing to Aquaman's remarkable box office success. The film benefited from relatively light competition during the Christmas corridor in the superhero genre, as no other comic book adaptations were in theaters. The colorful, visually spectacular nature of the film made it particularly appealing for premium format showings, where ticket prices commanded higher revenue. The lighter, more adventure-oriented tone distinguished it from some of the darker entries, potentially making it more accessible to general audiences and families. Strong critical reception, relative to some previous DC films, helped maintain positive word of mouth throughout its theatrical run. The December release timing allowed the film to play throughout the holidays when moviegoing increases significantly. China's embrace of Aquaman proved particularly notable and somewhat surprising to industry observers. The film opened to $93.6 million in its opening weekend in China, the biggest opening ever for a Warner Bros. Title and for a DC Comics film in that market. Several factors contributed to the film's Chinese success. The cast included several actors popular in Asian markets. The visual spectacle translated extremely well across cultural and language barriers. The mythological and fantasy elements resonated with Chinese audiences familiar with similar themes in their own cultural narratives, and Warner Bros. Had cultivated strong relationships with Chinese distributors and marketing partners. The Chinese performance single-handedly transformed Aquaman from a successful film into a billion-dollar blockbuster. The film's domestic box office trajectory demonstrated what industry observers call leggy performance, the ability to maintain strong week-to-week holds and attract audiences over an extended theatrical run rather than front-loading revenues in the opening weekend. This pattern indicated strong audience satisfaction and positive word of mouth, as repeat viewings and recommendations drove continued ticket sales. The pattern stood in contrast to some superhero films that opened to enormous numbers but dropped precipitously in subsequent weekends. The financial success of Aquaman had significant implications for Warner Bros. And the DC Extended Universe franchise. The billion-dollar gross validated the strategy of focusing on solo character films rather than rushing to build a shared universe through ensemble films. It demonstrated that DC characters beyond Batman and Superman could carry blockbuster films if given proper creative attention and marketing support. The success gave Warner Bros. Confidence to greenlight a sequel, which was announced relatively quickly after the film's strong performance became apparent. The film's performance also influenced the studio's approach to subsequent DC films, encouraging a greater willingness to embrace different tones and styles for different characters rather than imposing a uniform aesthetic across all centuries. Premium format showings contributed significantly to the overall gross. IMAX showings accounted for approximately $26.7 million of the domestic total and over $100 million worldwide, demonstrating the value of premium presentations for visually spectacular films. The 3D format, which had declined in popularity in North America, proved more successful internationally, particularly in China where 3D screenings commanded premium pricing and remained popular with audiences. By the end of its theatrical run, which extended well into early 2019, Aquaman had spent approximately 13 weeks in wide theatrical release. The film demonstrated remarkable staying power, continuing to add meaningful revenue well past its opening weekend and holiday corridor. This extended playability allowed the film to maximize its theatrical potential before transitioning to home entertainment formats. Critical response: Aquaman received generally positive reviews from film critics, a significant achievement for the DC Extended Universe, which had struggled with critical reception for several entries including Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, Suicide Squad, and Justice League. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 65% based on 428 reviews, with an average rating of 6.3 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, "Aquaman swims with its entertainingly ludicrous tide, offering up CGI superhero spectacle that delivers energetic action with an emphasis on good old-fashioned fun." This consensus captured the general critical sentiment that, while the film was not perfect, it succeeded in creating an entertaining spectacle that embraced its comic book origins without excessive self-seriousness. On Metacritic, which uses a weighted average system, Aquaman received a score of 55 out of 100 based on 50 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. This score placed it in the middle range of critical reception and not universally acclaimed but also far from poorly reviewed. The Metacritic score reflected the divide among critics, with some embracing the film's colorful excess while others found it overstuffed and narratively conventional. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, indicating strong audience satisfaction. Post-Track reported that 76% of audience members gave the film a positive score, with 62% saying they would definitely recommend it. These audience metrics significantly exceeded the critical scores, suggesting that general moviegoers responded more enthusiastically to the film than professional critics. The audience-critic divide is not uncommon for superhero films, which often prioritize spectacle and entertainment value over the narrative sophistication or thematic depth that critics may value. Critical praise for Aquaman centered on several key elements. Many reviewers highlighted the film's spectacular visual effects and world building, particularly the creation of Atlantis and the various underwater kingdoms. Critics appreciated director James Wan's commitment to creating a fully realized underwater world with its own distinct visual language, architecture, and ecosystem. The action sequences, particularly the climactic underwater battle featuring armies riding various sea creatures, received widespread acclaim for their imaginative choreography and visual invention. Jason Momoa's charismatic performance as Arthur Curry garnered positive notices, with critics noting that his portrayal brought unexpected humor and warmth to the character. Many reviewers appreciated that Momoa's version of Aquaman departed significantly from previous comic book interpretations, creating a character that felt fresh and engaging. The chemistry between Momoa and Amber Heard was frequently cited as a strength, with their antagonistic-turned-romantic dynamic providing emotional grounding for the fantastical adventures surrounding them. Director James Wan's willingness to embrace the inherent absurdity of the premise without descending into self-parody earned critical recognition. Several reviewers noted that the film found an appropriate tone that acknowledged the silliness of some concepts. Characters riding sharks and seahorses into battle, an entire civilization living beneath the ocean, while taking the emotional stakes seriously. This tonal balance proved difficult to achieve, and critics who responded positively to the film often cited this as a key success. However, Aquaman also received criticism on several fronts. A common complaint involved the film's lengthy runtime of 143 minutes, with some critics finding the pacing uneven and arguing that certain sequences could have been trimmed without losing narrative coherence. The plot structure, which borrowed heavily from classic quest narratives and hero's journey templates, struck some critics as overly familiar and predictable. Several reviewers noted that while the individual set pieces were entertaining, the overall narrative connecting them felt somewhat perfunctory. The dialogue received mixed to negative responses from many critics, with several reviewers characterizing some lines as clunky or exposition-heavy. The romantic subplot between Arthur and Mera, while praised for the actors' chemistry, was critiqued by some for following conventional romantic comedy beats that felt at odds with the epic fantasy adventures surrounding them. Some critics found the film's ambitious scope to be a weakness rather than a strength, arguing that the movie tried to accomplish too much, introducing 7 kingdoms, multiple villains, various mythological elements, a romance, family drama, and political intrigue, resulting in an overstuffed narrative that didn't allow individual elements sufficient development. The decision to include both Ocean Master and Black Manta as antagonists led some reviewers to suggest that one villain could have been saved for a sequel, allowing greater focus on a single antagonistic force. The visual effects, while generally praised, received some criticism for inconsistency. A few critics noted that certain sequences, particularly those heavily reliant on CGI characters and environments, occasionally crossed into uncanny valley territory or appeared overly artificial. The near-constant use of visual effects meant that very few shots in the film were purely practical, which some reviewers found visually exhausting over the film's extended runtime. Specific critical responses varied widely. Some publications offered glowing reviews that positioned Aquaman as one of the best entries in that year. Other major publications delivered more measured praise, acknowledging the film's entertainment value while noting its narrative shortcomings. Some critics offered negative reviews that found the film's spectacle hollow and the storytelling inadequate. The Hollywood Reporter's review exemplified the positive critical response, with the reviewer praising the film's visual imagination and noting that James Wan had created a genuinely distinctive comic book universe that felt different from the Marvel Cinematic Universe's house style. Variety's review struck a more moderate tone, appreciating the spectacle while questioning whether the film's narrative ambitions matched its visual ones. Some publications delivered more critical assessments, arguing that spectacular visuals couldn't compensate for a thin plot and underdeveloped characters. International critical response generally mirrored the North American reception, with critics in major markets praising the visual spectacle while offering varying assessments of the narrative and character development. Chinese critics, writing for domestic publications, responded particularly positively to the film's mythological elements and visual grandeur, which may have contributed to the extraordinary box office performance in that market. The critical reception placed Aquaman in an interesting position within the larger superhero genre. It received stronger reviews than Justice League, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Suicide Squad, but fell short of the critical acclaim received by Wonder Woman and later DC films like Shazam and the Suicide Squad. Within the broader superhero landscape dominated by the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Aquaman's critical scores placed it in the middle tier, more positively received than some MCU entries but not approaching the critical heights of films like Black Panther or the best-reviewed MCU installments. Several critics noted that Aquaman felt like a throwback to earlier eras of blockbuster filmmaking, drawing comparisons to the swashbuckling adventure films of the 1980s and the fantasy epics of earlier decades. This nostalgic quality was viewed as either a strength, providing a refreshing alternative to the quip-heavy MCU style, or a weakness, feeling dated compared to more sophisticated contemporary superhero narratives, depending on the critic's perspective. Award recognition for Aquaman focused primarily on technical achievements. The film received 3 nominations at the 91st Academy Awards, competing in the categories of Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. While it did not win any Oscars, the nominations themselves represented recognition of the film's technical accomplishments from the industry's most prestigious body. The Visual Effects Society Awards nominated the film in several categories, ultimately awarding it for Outstanding Created Environment in a Photoreal Feature. The film also received recognition from various critics' organizations for its visual effects and production design. The musical score by Rupert Gregson-Williams received mixed notices. Some critics found the orchestral work appropriately epic and emotionally supportive of key scenes, while others felt it was generic and forgettable compared to more distinctive superhero scores. The original songs, particularly Everything I Need by Skylar Grey, received generally positive responses for their emotional resonance and appropriate placement within the film. Critical discussion of Aquaman also addressed its position within the evolving superhero genre. Some reviewers appreciated that the film felt distinct from the Marvel Cinematic Universe's established aesthetic, offering a different visual and tonal approach to superhero storytelling. Others argued that the film's success demonstrated audience appetite for straightforward adventure narratives that didn't require extensive knowledge of previous installments or careful attention to shared universe continuity. The film's standalone nature, requiring minimal knowledge of previous SF films beyond a basic familiarity with Aquaman's cameo appearances, was seen as both a strength, accessibility, and a weakness. Missed opportunities for meaningful universe building. Representation and casting choices received some critical attention. Jason Momoa's casting as Aquaman, departing from the character's traditional blonde-haired, clean-cut comic book appearance, was generally praised for bringing fresh perspective to the character. Momoa, who is of native Hawaiian descent, brought cultural authenticity to a character with Polynesian heritage in the film's backstory. However, some critics noted that other diversity considerations were less successful, with minimal substantial roles for actors of African descent despite the global nature of the underwater kingdoms. The film's treatment of environmental themes received passing mention from some critics. While Aquaman touches on pollution and humanity's impact on the ocean, these themes remain largely subordinate to the adventure narrative. Some environmentally conscious critics felt this represented a missed opportunity given the character's traditional role as protector of the ocean, while others appreciated that the film didn't become overly didactic about ecological messaging. In the years following its release, critical reassessment of Aquaman has remained relatively consistent with initial reviews. The film is generally regarded as a successful entertainment spectacle that revitalized the SF franchise at a crucial moment, even if it doesn't represent the pinnacle of superhero filmmaking. Its influence can be seen in subsequent films' willingness to embrace colorful visuals and fantastical world building, potentially encouraging studios to take greater visual risks with comic book adaptations. The legacy of Aquaman within the critical discourse around superhero films centers on several key accomplishments, demonstrating that DC characters beyond Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman could carry successful blockbuster films, proving that audiences would embrace visually distinctive superhero narratives that departed from established genre conventions, validating December as a viable release window for superhero films, which had traditionally favored summer months, and showing that international markets, particularly China, could dramatically impact a film's financial success and justify creative decisions that prioritize visual spectacle over dialogue-heavy storytelling. Critical opinion remains divided on whether Aquaman represents a template that should be followed or an outlier whose specific combination of elements succeeded despite narrative weaknesses. The film's sequel, announced in development shortly after the original's success, will likely influence how critics ultimately assess the first film's achievements and shortcomings. For now, Aquaman occupies a position as a commercially triumphant, critically acceptable entry in the superhero genre that successfully accomplished its primary goal, entertaining global audiences while establishing its protagonist as a viable franchise character worthy of continued big-screen adventures. Thanks to the smash successes of Aquaman, A Star Is Born, and The Meg, Warner Bros. Capped off 2018 with a new milestone. The studio had its biggest year to date at the worldwide box office, crossing $5.6 billion in ticket sales and outpacing 2017 by 9%. Both domestic and international markets contributed to the boost in ticket sales, putting the studio behind Disney at No. 2. In terms of market share, the studio's North American box office bounty crossed $1.9 billion. Overseas, Warner Bros. Generated $3.6 billion, an uptick of 17% from 2017 and eclipsing the record of $3.17 billion set in 2014. Related stories: the improvement was due in part to foreign markets, where Warner Bros. Saw record years in 21 territories, including China, Russia, and Ukraine. Titles that did modest business in the States like Ready Player One and Rampage were able to pull in crowds and resonate in a big way overseas. Non-traditional films really worked in those regions, and that was very interesting, said Tom Moulter, Warner Brothers head of international distribution. That means audiences are very receptive to go to the movies and see good stories. That's very encouraging. Warner Brothers' record year came despite some fierce headwinds in major markets. Multiplexes in Italy, Spain, and South Korea suffered some declines and China's growth slowed to 9%. Still, China had a banner year for the studio and brought in over $951 million. Jason Momoa's glistening abs paired with the appeal of Furious 7 director James Wan were able to lure moviegoers and make Aquaman a roaring achievement. It's now both Warner Brothers and DC's highest grossing movie to date in the Middle Kingdom. Not all titles that struck a chord in Hollywood were able to find their footing overseas. Crazy Rich Asians, for example, couldn't find an audience in China. That's partially because what made the film become a cultural touchstone in North America was the novelty of having a big-budget studio romantic comedy with an all-Asian cast for the first time in 25 years. It didn't hold the same resonance in the mainland, where most theatrical releases feature Asian talent. China is such an interesting place because it's very unpredictable, Moulter said. When you can get a movie that really resonates with Chinese audiences, it makes a big difference. Overall, a diverse slate of blockbusters buoyed revenues to new heights. Aquaman was Warner Brothers' top-earning movie of the year worldwide with $850 million and counting, while A Star Is Born was the sole title to cross $200 million in North America in 2018. Aquaman didn't pass that milestone domestically until January. The studio's other biggest films globally include Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, $631 million, Ready Player One, $582 million, and The Meg, $528 million. Correction. This article originally erroneously stated that Warner Brothers crossed $42 billion worldwide, which is the industry's total global box office haul, not the studio's revenues. In today's film news roundup, Aquaman has already grossed more than $150 million outside the US. Michael Massini joins Birds of Prey, and Freestyle buys the documentary Shamanic Trekker. Box office. Warner Brothers' tentpole Aquaman has taken in $152 million overseas in 36 markets, with $135 million of that from China, where it opened on December 7. The Jason Momoa vehicle has become the highest China grosser in the DC universe and surpassed the lifetime grosses of Spider-Man, Homecoming and Black Panther in the Middle Kingdom. Mexico debuted with $1.4 million on Thursday on 3,517 screens, while Russia and Brazil each took in $1.3 million. Related stories. Indonesia has taken in $2.2 million in 2 days and the UK generated $1.8 million in 2 days of previews. Taiwan's 2-day total is $1.4 million and the Philippines generated $1.1 million. In the US, Amazon Prime is holding advance screenings of Aquaman on December 15 amid expectations of a $65 million opening weekend in North America on December the 21st to the 23rd. Casting. Michael Massini, Modern Family, will join Margot Robbie and Ewan McGregor in the Warner Brothers Harley Quinn spin-off film Birds of Prey. The film will be directed by Kathy Yan and begins filming in January. The studio has dated the project, a spin-off from 2016's Suicide Squad, for February 7, 2020. Sue Kroll, Robbie, and Brian Unclus are producing. Robbie announced last month that the title will be Birds of Prey, and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Massini's credits include Blue Bloods and Nice. Acquisition. Freestyle Digital Media has acquired North American rights to the documentary Shamanic Trekker for release on January 8. The film focuses on the Cuero tribe of the high Andes and the sacred rituals and ceremonies of the indigenous shamans. The Cuero are potato farmers, weavers, and alpaca herders living in stone houses without electricity, running water, and plumbing. Shamanic Trekker is directed by Emmanuel Atier and Kristen White, written by Kristen Schwab, and produced by Kristen Schwab. John Schwab. The shamanic descendants of Machu Picchu are alive today and have something powerful to share in modern media, said White. We are grateful to the team at Freestyle Digital Media for making it possible to share this powerful message. Award. The U.S. Island Alliance will honor Aidan Gillen at the 14th Annual Oscar Wilde Awards, which will be held at J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot in Santa Monica, California, on February 21. Gillen's credits include Game of Thrones and The Wire. He is currently in production the BBC Netflix series Peaky Blinders and is about to star in the Robert Zemeckis-produced history series Project Blue Book. On the big screen, Gillen recently appeared in A24's The Lovers and Maze Runner, Death Cure, and currently appears in Fox's Bohemian Rhapsody. Trina Vargo, founder of the U.S. Island Alliance, said, Aidan's body of work is rich with a range of diverse and memorable roles that span television, theater and film. While his career has taken him to London, Los Angeles and beyond, he has remained loyal to working Ireland as well. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is a 2023 American superhero film based on the DC Comics character Aquaman. Directed by James Wan from a screenplay by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, it is the sequel to Aquaman, 2018. And the 15th and final film in the DC Extended Universe. Jason Momoa stars as Arthur Curry, Aquaman, who must work with his half-brother Patrick Wilson, to prevent Black Manta, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, from killing his family and using the cursed Black Trident to overheat the world while searching for the lost Seventh Kingdom of the Seas. Amber Heard, Randall Park, Dolph Lundgren, Temuera Morrison, Martin Short, and Nicole Kidman also star in supporting roles. Momoa pitched a story for an Aquaman sequel during the first film's production. One did not want to rush a sequel after the first film's commercial success but agreed in January 2019 to oversee development. Johnson McGoldrick signed on to return as screenwriter a month later, and Wan was confirmed to be returning as director in August 2020. He said the film would expand on Aquaman's world building, have a more serious tone, and feature themes such as climate change. It is a buddy comedy between Aquaman and Dom, and was inspired by the Silver Age of comic books with a retro science fiction vibe similar to the works of animator Ray Harryhausen and the horror films of the 1960s, specifically Planet of the Vampires, 1965. One announced the sequel's title in June 2021, and principal photography began later that month and concluded in January 2022. Filming took place in the United Kingdom, Hawaii, Los Angeles, and New Jersey, with additional filming in New Zealand. Several reshoots took place between July 2022 and June 2023 to alter the storyline, while some actors' roles were reduced, including Heard's, whose involvement was the subject of controversy during production. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom premiered at a fan event at the Grove, Los Angeles on December 19, 2023. And was released in the United States on December 22. The film received negative reviews from critics and grossed $440 million worldwide against a production budget of $215 million. Plot, edit, 4 years after becoming king of Atlantis, Arthur Curry has married Mera and has a son, Arthur Jr., while splitting his life between land and sea. Meanwhile, David Gain, Black Manta, continues to seek revenge against Arthur for his father's death, working with marine biologist Stephen Shin to find Atlantean artifacts. When Shin accidentally discovers a cavern in Antarctica, Manta finds a black trident that possesses him, its creator promising to give him the power to destroy Arthur and Atlantis. 5 months later, Manta breaks into an orichalcum reserve on Atlantis to steal it and power his Atlantean machines, which are of ancient origin but of unknown design to modern Atlanteans. Caught midway, they are chased by Atlantean forces, with Mera injured in the ensuing battle. Arthur learns that this usage of orichalcum, which emits high quantities of greenhouse gases, has not only raised planetary temperatures and caused extreme weather and ocean acidification. It also nearly caused a planetary extinction in the past, when used by an ancient Atlantean kingdom. To learn where Mantu is hiding, Arthur breaks his half-brother Om out of prison. Together, they visit a pirate haven called the Sunken Citadel, where they meet Kingfish to learn of Manta's whereabouts. The information they obtain leads them to a volcanic island in the South Pacific, where they battle Manta's forces after navigating flora and fauna mutated by the orichalcum. There, when Om touches the Black Trident, it shows him visions of its provenance. Om learns the trident was created by Kordax, the brother of King Atlan and ruler of the lost kingdom of Necrus. He was imprisoned with blood magic following a failed attempt to usurp the throne. Realizing the blood of any of Atlan's descendants could release Kordax, the pair deduce Manta has kidnapped Arthur Jr. With Shin's help, the Atlanteans determine that Kordax's prison and the lost kingdom of Necrus are located in Antarctica. In Necrus, Arthur fights Manta and is almost killed before Mera arrives and saves him. Manta throws the Black Trident at her as she is taking her son to safety, but Om catches it before it strikes her. The spirit of Kordax leaves Manta for Om, who proceeds to fight Arthur and uses Arthur's blood to free Kordax. Arthur convinces his brother to give up his hatred for him, allowing him to destroy both Kordax and the Black Trident. With Kordax's magic vanishing, Necrus starts to collapse. Manta refuses Arthur's help, allowing himself to fall into a fissure. The Atlanteans and Shin safely escape and determine that Om has redeemed himself. Arthur and Mera plan to inform Atlantis that he died, on the condition that he remain hidden and vacate Atlantis to the surface world. Believing the unification of the underwater kingdoms and the surface world is necessary to prevent further damage to the oceans and planet, Arthur reveals Atlantis' existence through an announcement at the United Nations, declaring his intentions of making the kingdom a member state. Cast. Edit. Further information, list of DC Extended Universe cast members and characters of the DC Extended Universe. Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson star in the film, which is a buddy comedy focused on the bromance relationship between their characters Aquaman and Dom. 8. While Yahya Abdul-Mateen II and Nicole Kidman were given larger roles than in the first film, respectively as the main antagonist and Aquaman's advisor. 9-10. Jason Momoa as Arthur Curry, Aquaman. The half-Atlantean, half-human king of Atlantis who can swim at supersonic speeds and summon and command aquatic life. 11, and is the father of Arthur Jr. with Mera. 12. Producer Peter Safran called Arthur the ultimate outsider, explaining he doesn't believe he's part of the surface world or Atlantis and he never felt he belonged in either world. 13. Director James Wan said the film was a true continuation of the character's story from the first film Aquaman, 2018, explaining that Arthur is forced to juggle his duties as the king of Atlantis with his role as a father while protecting both his family and kingdom. Safran said the heart of the story is that Arthur is a superhero who is both human and superhuman, involved in an epic battle with high stakes. 14. One felt that including Arthur Jr. in the film was a natural extension of the first film and contrasted Arthur's role as king with the juxtaposition of his domestic responsibilities as a father. 12. Patrick Wilson as Om Marius. Arthur's Atlantean half-brother and the former king of Atlantis who is stripped of his title as the Ocean Master. He is imprisoned in the Sahara Desert by the deserted tribe for assassinating the Fisherman King, with a limited water supply to dampen his powers, causing him to bear a gaunt and scraggly appearance. Om is freed from prison and recruited by Arthur to help find and defeat Black Manta. 14, 15, 16, Amber Heard as Mera, Arthur's wife and the mother of Arthur Jr., who can control water. She is the queen of Atlantis and the former princess of Xebel, as well as King Nereus' daughter. 17, 18, 19, the character is injured early in the film and recovers for much of its events, before joining Aquaman, Om, and Atlanta in their journey to defeat Black Manta. Several of Heard's scenes were cut during reshoots. 20. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as David Kane, Black Manta, a ruthless pirate and high seas mercenary who uses an Atlantean armored suit and wields the powerful Black Trident, seeking to kill Arthur and his family as revenge for the death of his father. 21. 22. 23. One said Black Manta's love for his father and need to avenge his death take a darker turn in the film, with the character becoming more powerful. 14. The director had planned while working on the first film to have Black Manta, who he described as having been a glorified side character, return as the main antagonist in its sequel, opting to establish his conflictive relationship with Arthur to give him a bigger role in this film. 9. Black Manta seeks to obtain blood from a descendant of the Atlantean king Atlan to free the Black Trident's creator Kordax from his imprisonment in the lost kingdom of Necros, and commands an army of undead warriors from Necros using the Black Trident which possesses him. 24. 25. One said Black Manta's suit, which forgoes the all-black power suit from the first film for a design that was remade in all silver and more accurate to the comics version, as well as his ship and technology, were inspired by the aesthetic of the Silver Age Aquaman comics and Ivan Reis's The New 52 comics. 26:16. Randall Park as Dr. Stephen Shin, a marine biologist obsessed with finding Atlantis who works for Black Manta after rescuing him in the first film. 27:19. Dolph Lundgren as Nereus, the king of Xebel and Mera's father. 28. Lundgren had a larger role in the original version of the film, which he said was reduced during reshoots. 20. Temuera Morrison as Thomas Curry, Arthur's father who works as a lighthouse keeper at Amnesty Bay. 29:24. Martin Short as the voice of Kingfish, a gigantic piscine humanoid of indeterminate species and the confident ruler of the sunken citadel, an underwater pirate haven, whom Arthur and Om visit to locate Black Manta. He has a smarmy and cocky voice, behaves like a classical Roman emperor with an extravagant lifestyle and lady servants, and is guarded by humanoid hammerhead shark bodyguards. 30:31. Nicole Kidman as Atlana, Arthur and Om's mother and the former queen of Atlantis. 32. Atlana's role as Arthur's advisor on how the underwater world works was able to be expanded upon given the absence of New Idas Vilko, who served in that role in the first film and is revealed to have been killed off-screen due to a plague indirectly caused by Black Manta's actions in this film and humanity's pollution from the land affecting the oceans. 10:33:16. New additions to the cast are Vincent Regan as Atlan, the first king of Atlantis, replacing Graham McTavish from the first film. 27. Jani Zhao as Stingray, a loyal member of Black Manta's crew. 27:19. India Moore as Karshan. 27. An Atlantean and the leader of the High Council of the Seven Kingdoms who serves as a political barrier for Arthur by opposing his desire to reveal Atlantis to the human world. 1916-34, and Piloas Batilda Broken Barkay as Kordax, the undead king of the lost kingdom of Necros, the Black City, who was Atlan's brother and the creator of the cursed Black Trident, through which Kordax's evil spirit possesses Black Manta. 35-36-16, Karshan is not a humanoid shark character as depicted in the comics. 34, while this version of Kordax is a composite character of the original comics version and Orin, which was the name of Atlan's brother and Aquaman in some comic iterations. 35-16. Underwater creatures of the Seven Kingdoms returning from the first film are the Brine King, voiced by John Rhys Davis and physically portrayed on set by Andrew Crawford. 37-38, Storm, a giant seahorse and Arthur's steed. 39-8, and the octopus TOPO, which stands for Tactical Observation and Pursuit Operative. 40, who is a tactical covert operative for Atlantis that aids Arthur in freeing Om on their quest, in addition to playing several instruments, such as the drums. 1841-42-16, one said TOPO, who was created through visual effects, was a real character in the film after briefly appearing in the first film, with an undisclosed actor occasionally standing in for T.O.P.O. with a stick puppet for Momoa to act against. 41. The director described the character and Arthur as having a fun, slightly antagonistic relationship, while Momoa said T.O.P.O. added a lot of comedy which complemented Arthur being very salty. 42. Various infants portray Arthur and Mera's son Arthur Jr., who has similar water-based abilities as his parents. 25-43, Saffron's wife Natalia makes a cameo appearance as a member of the High Council. 44, while Michael Beach appears uncredited as Black Manta's father Jesse Kane through archive footage from the first film. 44-45, Beach was approached to film some flashback scenes, but was unavailable due to scheduling issues. 45, Production, Edit, Development, Edit, Interest and Early Work, Edit. James Wan returned as director from the first film after choosing not to rush a sequel. 46-47, during the production of Aquaman, 2018, star Jason Momoa developed a story pitch for a sequel that he gave to Warner Bros. Pictures Group chairman Toby Emmerich and producer Peter Safran. In October 2018, before the film's release, Momoa said he would be more involved in the development of a potential sequel and expected filming to begin in 2019. Director James Wan said several storylines could spin out from Aquaman, with that film introducing 7 underwater kingdoms that had yet to be fully explored. 11:48, Momoa and his producing partner Brian Mendoza wrote a 50-page treatment for the sequel, which Warner Bros. Bought but did not entirely follow. 13, and the actor was paid $15 million for his involvement. 49. Emmerich had enough confidence in box office projections for the film by early December to begin discussing a sequel. 50. By the end of January 2019, when Aquaman was set to become the highest-grossing film based on a single DC Comics character, Warner Bros. Was in negotiations with Wan to oversee the development and writing of a sequel with the potential to return as director. Jeff Boucher of Deadline Hollywood noted that Wan had been very protective of sequels to his previous films Insidious, 2010, and The Conjuring, 2013, and was deeply invested in the world-building of Aquaman. Wan had previously compared the world of Aquaman to other fictional worlds such as Middle-earth, the Star Wars galaxy, and the Wizarding World. 51. In early February 2019, Warner Bros. Hired Noah Gardner and Aidan Fitzgerald to write the script for a horror-tinged Aquaman spin-off film titled The Trench, based on one of the kingdoms introduced in the first film. It was expected to have a smaller budget and not feature the main cast of Aquaman, with Wan and Safran producing. Boris Kitt of The Hollywood Reporter reported then that there had not yet been serious discussions about a direct sequel to Aquaman between the studio, Wan, and Momoa, due to them wanting to have a breather first. 52, but several days later he reported that active development on a sequel was getting underway with the first film's co-writer and frequent Wan collaborator, David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, signing on to write the screenplay. Wan and Safran were producing the sequel, however, it was still unclear if Wan would direct it. 53. At the end of February, Warner Bros. Scheduled Aquaman 2 for release on December 16, 2022. 54. The next month, Safran explained that he and Wan did not want to rush a sequel, and Warner Bros. Had been supportive of that, which is why the film's release was scheduled for 4 years after the first film. He added that they were approaching the Aquaman franchise similarly to the Conjuring universe, with spin-offs like The Trench exploring stories about the underwater kingdoms alongside the mothership films featuring Aquaman. Safran said Wan knew the architecture, the armory, the military, the look, the feel, and the general vibe of each of the 7 kingdoms and wanted to explore them all in future projects. 47. In July 2019, Wan was set to direct the film Malignant, 2021, before beginning work on Aquaman 2. 55. Patrick Wilson said in November that he had discussed plans for the sequel with Wan and indicated that he would be reprising his role as Marius, Ocean Master from the first film. 56. A month later, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II confirmed that he was returning as David Kane, Black Manta, and was looking to flesh out the character. 21. Johnson McGoldrick stated in March 2020 that the sequel would not be based on a specific comic book, but was taking inspiration from the Aquaman stories of the Silver Age of comic books that featured Black Manta as the villain. 57. One was confirmed to be directing the sequel at the virtual DC Fandom event in August. 46. When Wilson was also confirmed to return. 58. One said it would be more serious than the first film and feature themes that were more relevant to the real world. 46. Such as climate change. He said the creatives were not afraid to address this on a big scale through the film, noting that the Aquaman character is environmentally conscious in the comics and fights to keep the ocean clean. He also affirmed that the film would remain a fun action fantasy movie. 59. Momoa said a scene was featured in the film in which Aquaman addresses the United Nations on climate change, with the actor having previously done so at the UN's Ocean. Keaton's version was set to be introduced to the DS in The Flash before that film's release was pushed to after Aquaman and the Lost Kingdoms. The scene reportedly confused audiences during test screenings, and Couch felt this was why Affleck joined the reshoots. 106. In August, Warner Bros. Delayed the film to December 25, 2023, to help spread out the marketing and distribution costs for its feature films. 107. This pushed the film's release to after the planned release of The Flash, which meant there was potential for Keaton's version of Batman to appear in the film instead of Affleck's. 108. Keaton's cameo had reportedly been cut from the film by October. 109. Around that time, DeLuca and Abdi told One to reduce the budget for the reshoots because the film's budget had reached $205 million during production. 110. Safran and writer, director James Gunn were hired as the co-chairman and co-CEOs of the newly formed DC Studios at the end of October. 111. A week after starting their new roles, the pair had begun developing an 8 to 10 year plan for a new franchise called the DC Universe, DCU, that would be a soft reboot of the DC. 112. 113. By the middle of November, Safran had been fixing The Lost Kingdom. 114, while Gunn had provided notes on it by the following month. 115. Momoa said in January 2023 that he had shot scenes with a couple of actors as Batman, but was unsure which would be included in the final cut. 116. After further test screenings in early 2023, Gunn consulted on the film. 104. In April, the film's release date was moved forward 5 days earlier to December 20, 2023. 117. The reshoots had concluded just before the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike began early the following month. 4. And the studios approached a third set of reshoots which increased the film's budget to occur in New Zealand over 5 days in the middle of June with Momoa and Wilson. Those reshoots were completed in 4 days. By then, both Affleck and Keaton were excluded from the latest cut of the film due to Gunn and Safran's plans for the DCU. 104. Neither actor appeared in the final version of the film. 118. Following the reshoots, the film's budget ultimately reached $215 million. 4. External videos. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, main on-end title sequence. Filmograph presents the film's main on-end title sequence, Vimeo video from Filmograph's channel. Explaining the reshoots, One said he had to make some adjustments during production as it had been challenging to keep track of the different versions of the DC while remaining mindful of other plans for the franchise, but was fortunate that the Aquaman films were far removed from the rest of the DC films and characters. 59. In September, the director said the film would not be connected to any previous DC films as he was uncertain if it was going to be released before or after The Flash, which was intended to reboot the DC. 8. He explained that he had directed a relatively small amount of additional photography, which he described as a routine part of the production process, due to some actors being unavailable during some parts of principal photography. 8. Lundgren later said that the studio decided to reshoot much of the footage to rebuild it with a slightly different storyline, reducing his and Heard's roles. 2073. In October 2023, the film's release was delayed by 2 days to December 22, 2023. 119. The following month, Warner Bros. Signed a new multi-year co-financing deal with Domain Capital for their theatrical films, including The Lost Kingdom, through that company's $700 million fund for media and entertainment, Domain Entertainment. 121. Kirk Murray returned as the editor from the first film, 3675, and Nick Davis served as the visual effects supervisor, having previously worked on The Dark Knight, 2008. 75. Nearly each frame in the film featured visual effects, 101-104, which were provided by Signsight, DNEG, Industrial Light Magic, ILM, Moving Picture Company, MPC, Scanline VFX, 122, and Rodeo FX. 123. Music. Edit. Main article, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, soundtrack. Rupert Gregson Williams revealed in August 2021 that he was returning to compose the score for the sequel after doing so for the first film and DC's Wonder Woman, 2017. 124. The song Deep End was performed by ex-ambassadors and released as a single on November 17, 2023. 125. The soundtrack album for Gregson Williams' score was released by Water Tower Music on December 22. 126. Marketing. Edit. Promotional video with Momoa and Wilson released in February 2024, via Max's YouTube channel. Wan and Wilson teased plans for the film in a panel at the virtual DC Fandom event in August 2020. 46. Concept art and behind-the-scenes footage from filming were revealed at DC Fandom the following year. 22. In February 2022, the first footage from the film was released as part of a teaser for Warner Bros.'s 2022 slate of DC films, which also included The Batman, Black Adam, and The Flash, before Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom and The Flash were delayed to 2023 the following month. 127.99. One promoted the film at Warner Bros.'s CinemaCon panel in April 2022, showing a recorded message of Momoa as well as some brief footage from the film. 128. He revealed more concept art for the film when its release date was delayed in August. 108. The first trailer was showcased during Warner Bros.'s CinemaCon panel in April 2023, showing the bromance between Arthur and Dom among other footage. 129. Steve Weintraub at Collider said the footage looked absolutely massive in scale and featured several action sequences. 23. The first theatrical trailer was released on September 14, 2023. 130. The cast was not able to participate in marketing during the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike, 4, until the strike ended in November. 131. IWC Schaffhausen, in collaboration with Warner Bros. Pictures, released an Aquatimer Perpetual Calendar digital date month diving watch, inspired by the watches worn by Abdul Mateen II and Park in the film. 76. Release. Edit. Theatrical. Edit. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom premiered on December 19, 2023, at a fan event screening at the Grove at Farmers Market in Los Angeles. 132, 133, 134. This was noted by Boris Kitt of The Hollywood Reporter for not having a red carpet event and after party, with One and Momoa attending after a series of blue carpet photo calls and small-scale fan events in London, Beijing, and Los Angeles. 132. The film was released in China on December 20, 131, and in the United States on December 22, 119, in IMAX, 3D, 4DX, and ScreenX, among other premium large formats, PLFs. 134-135. It was originally set for release on December 16, 2022, 54, but was moved to March 17, 2023, when Warner Bros. Adjusted its release schedule due to the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on the workload of visual effects vendors. 99. It was then moved to December 25, 2023, when Warner Bros. Discovery was trying to spread out marketing and distribution costs. 107. Before moving forward to December 20, 117, and ultimately being pushed back by 2 days to December 22. 119. Home Media. Edit. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was released by Warner Bros. Home Entertainment on digital download on January 23, 2024, 40, on the Warner Bros. Streaming service Max on February 27, 136, and on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on March 12. It includes behind-the-scenes featurettes, as well as the special feature Atlantean Blood is Thicker Than Water, which explores Aquaman and Dom's dynamic on both Blu-ray versions and the original motion comic Aquaman, Through Fire and Water on premium digital versions. 40. According to Nielsen Media Research, which measures the viewership of media on streaming services, The Lost Kingdom was the most watched film on streaming upon its debut for the week of February 26 to March 3, 2024, with a total of 685 million minutes watched. 137. Reception. Edit. Box office. Edit. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom grossed $124.5 million in the United States and Canada, and $315.7 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $440.2 million. 5. It became the highest-grossing DC film since the first Aquaman film, but it grossed less than half of that film's box office revenue. 138. Some commentators deemed that the film floundered at the box office. 139, 136, 137, with Aidan Kelly of Collider estimating that it needed to earn $355 million worldwide to reach its break-even point. 139, while Slash Films' Hannah Shaw Williams thought it was unlikely that the film would break even during its theatrical run, even after surpassing a worldwide gross of $400 million. 140. Jill Goldsmith at Deadline Hollywood noted that the revenue of Warner Bros.'s theatrical films released in the fourth quarter were higher on most releases, including The Lost Kingdom, although this was lower than box office analysts had predicted despite lowered projections. 141. In the United States and Canada, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was released alongside Migration, Anyone But You, and The Iron Claw, and was projected to gross around $40 million in its 4-day opening weekend. 134. The film earned $13.7 million on its first day, including $4.5 million from Thursday night previews. It went on to have a traditional opening weekend of $27.7 million, the fourth lowest of the DC, and the second lowest among those films unaffected by the COVID-19 pandemic. 142.3, it then made $10.6 million on Christmas Day, for a 4-day total of $38.3 million. 142, in its second weekend, the film made $19.5 million, a drop of 30%, finishing in third behind Wonka and Migration. 143. In its third weekend, the film made $10.6 million, a drop of 42%, remaining in third. 144. In its fourth weekend, the film made $5.3 million, a drop of 50%, finishing in sixth. 145. Critical response. Edit. The film received negative reviews from critics. 146. 147. The review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes calculated that 33% of 212 critic reviews were positive and the average rating was 4.9. The website's critical consensus reads, Jason Momoa remains a capable and committed leading man. But even DC diehards may feel that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom sticks to familiar waters. 148. Metacritic assigned the film a weighted average score of 42 out of 100 based on 43 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. 149. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B on an A+ to F scale, tied with Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice and The Flash for the lowest of the DSE, while Post-Track reported 69% of filmgoers gave it a positive score, with 50% saying they would definitely recommend the film. 142. The chemistry between Momoa and Wilson was noted by critics as one of the film's high marks. 150. 151. Matt Zoller Seats of RogerEbert.com noted Jason Momoa as the high mark of the film. Momoa is the best reason to see the movie. He's as alpha cool, even jerkish, as a maverick action star can be, while also making you believe his character is fundamentally decent and knows when he's gone too far and sincerely feels bad about it. And he's got range. Seats gave the movie 3 out of 4 stars. 152. Both Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian and The Independent's Clarisse Lory provided a 1-star rating for the film. Bradshaw compared the humor to Taika Waititi's Marvel films Thor, Ragnarok, 2017, and Thor, Love and Thunder, 2022, and felt Aquaman's role as a father was a derivative trope used as a tired relatability shortcut by Hollywood. He also lamented Randall Park's role in the film, feeling it was entirely wasted, and expressed ambivalent feelings about the cast performances. Meanwhile, Lory labeled the film as an entry in the rogues gallery of brainless franchise films, opining that one might have incorporated elements from his planned project that drench into the project. She was surprised the film's theme was about climate change and thought Mera's role was faux feminist and narratively contrived, noting Amber Heard's legal controversies. Furthermore, she also called the set pieces derivative and thought the humor negatively impacted the film's emotional moments. 153. 154. Giving a 2-star review, writer Nicholas Barber of the BBC began by expressing his view that Aquaman's box office revenue was the primary reason for this film's existence. However, he praised the performances of Wilson and Abdul Mateen too, while noting that Momoa seems to have been miscast as he's too earthy to be the king of the sea. Barber also called the relationship between Arthur and cliché copyright D, lamented at the complete waste of Kidman's talent, and opined that while most of Heard's scenes had been edited out, the film's unrelated plot was such that her absence did not matter much. Ultimately, he concluded that the film never attempts anything original or honest and criticized its brutal editing for rushing through every potentially major event in a blur of montages and voiceovers. 155. David Fear of Rolling Stone felt it functioned as a standalone film and was separate from the DSE, but disliked the tone and visual effects. Fear also called the storytelling curiously thin and was mixed on its commentary regarding climate change, but appreciated Momoa's performance and thought the film adequately concluded the DSE. 156. CNN's Brian Lowry negatively compared it to Wonder Woman 1984, 2020, and felt the lack of a new antagonist was to its detriment, calling David Kane a one-note villain. He enjoyed Momoa's performance and thought it contributed to the film's fun, but also was not interested in Arthur and Om's relationship as it wades through too many clunky moments to reach the few good ones. 157, writing for the Associated Press, Mark Kennedy thought the film's plot to be derivative from other films such as The Matrix, 1999, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Star Wars and disliked references to other films. Nevertheless, Kennedy considered Momoa's performance to be holding it all together, and summed up the film as attempting to raise the stakes by increasing the production budget. 158. One's direction was commended by Alyssa Wilkinson at the New York Times and Phil Owen of GameSpot, with Wilkinson crediting him with creating a film beyond the paint-by-numbers superhero movies we've been watching for decades now. Wilkinson also enjoyed the political commentary, as she felt certain elements were metaphors for authoritarianism and fascism. She primarily enjoyed Wilson's performance and Om's character development compared to Aquaman, but felt certain plot elements and the humor became repetitive and boring. Owen commended the production values but felt it lacked substance and was empty-headed, giving the film an 8 out of 10. 159-160, the AV Club's Matthew Jackson gave it a B grade, enthusiastically enjoying the film's depiction of Om and Arthur's relationship, calling that formula absolute gold, both on a set piece and a character level. Jackson opined that the narrative contained too much and disliked the plotting, but he still felt it could effectively tell a cohesive narrative and enjoyed his overall viewing experience. Jackson concluded, and above all else, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is fun. It does not dwell on its status as a finale for a certain comic book movie era, nor does it worry over the possibility that we'll never see Momoa's Arthur Curry again. Instead, this is a film that takes big swing after big swing, and leaves us filled up with spectacle, warmth, and a sense that the wait was probably worth it. 161. Michael Ordo 8+- of the Los Angeles Times felt it highlighted climate change in an earnest if clumsy fashion and expressed minor complaints with the absence of